The rain poured over the city, cold and relentless, like the sky itself was weeping. Through the darkened streets, a young woman ran, her coat soaked through, her breath ragged. Fear and desperation flickered in her wide, stormy eyes. Serena Aldridge, the only daughter of the powerful Aldridge family, had just escaped from her own engagement party, a marriage built not on love but on wealth and power. She wouldn't let herself be caged like a pretty little bird for the rest of her life. Behind her, footsteps echoed ominously in the night. Her family's guards were already searching. If they caught her now, she would never get another chance to escape. There! Catch her! Panic seized her chest. In a split second, her gaze locked onto a towering stone wall surrounding an opulent estate. There was no time to hesitate. With trembling fingers, she gripped the rough bricks, hauling herself up despite the rain-slicked surface. Her arms ached, her lungs burned, but she managed to pull herself over and land on the damp grass below, breathless. Before she could even recover, a deep voice cut through the darkness. "Who's there?" Serena's heart lurched. A man sat on a stone bench in the middle of the garden, his posture relaxed yet alert. He wasn't looking at her, but his presence alone sent chills down her spine. She had trespassed into someone's estate. The man tilted his head slightly, his voice calm but edged with an unmistakable authority. "Do you think that just because I'm blind, I wouldn't notice an intruder in my own garden?" Serena gasped and instinctively stepped back, only to trip over a small root, nearly falling. "No, I'm not a thief. I just have nowhere else to go." Silence. The man remained still, as if considering her words. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he stood up. He was tall, his presence commanding yet strangely detached. "If you have nowhere to go, then work here as a maid." Serena stared at him, stunned. She couldn't believe she had just been rescued in the most unexpected way. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft golden streaks across the unfamiliar room. Serena stirred, her mind still clouded with remnants of sleep. For a brief moment, she thought it had all been a dream. But the luxurious bedding, the faint scent of sandalwood, and the overwhelming silence told her otherwise. She was really here? The events of last night played in her mind like fragmented scenes from a film. Running through the rain, climbing the high stone wall, the deep voice that stopped her in the garden, and now she was in the home of Adrian Knight, a man she knew nothing about. Except for one thing. He was blind. Before she could process everything, a sharp knock on the door made her tense. A middle-aged man, dressed in an impeccable suit, entered the room, his expression stern and eyes filled with suspicion. "Who are you?" Serena swallowed hard, forcing herself to sound confident. I'm the new maid." The man's frown deepened, his gaze scrutinizing her from head to toe. "A maid? Are you joking?" Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air. Calm, steady, and absolute. "She stays." Serena turned. Adrian Knight stood at the doorway, his posture relaxed, yet exuding quiet authority. Though his eyes held no focus, the way he carried himself made it clear. He wasn't a man to be questioned. The butler hesitated before nodding and exiting, but Serena could tell he still had doubts about her presence. Serena had never done housework before, but now she had no choice. The problem was, she was terrible at it. Her first attempt at mopping the floors ended in disaster when she accidentally kicked over an entire bucket of water, spilling it across the polished hardwood. She scrambled to clean it up, only to slip and land in a heap right in front of Adrian, who had been quietly sitting on the couch sipping tea. He raised an eyebrow, his voice smooth but undeniably amused. "Are you trying to destroy my house?" Serena's face burned with embarrassment. "I'll clean it up right away." Adrian didn't respond, but the slight twitch at the corner of his lips made her wonder if he was holding back a smirk. But that wasn't her only failure. The next morning, determined to do at least one thing right, she decided to make Adrian a cup of coffee. She carefully prepared it and handed it to him, watching as he took a slow sip. He instantly froze, his jaw tensed. Then he placed the cup back down with deliberate slowness. "Did you just serve me salt water?" Serena paled, snatching the cup from his hands and taking a sip herself. Her eyes widened. Bitter, incredibly bitter. She had forgotten to add sugar. "I'll make a new one," she stammered, rushing back to the kitchen, leaving Adrian shaking his head behind her. And then there was the laundry incident. In what she thought was an innocent mistake, she somehow managed to shrink all of Adrian's dress shirts after washing them in hot water. When the butler discovered it, he looked like he had just seen a ghost. Serena stood frozen, gripping the tiny shirts in her hands. Adrian, upon hearing the commotion, merely sighed. "You seem to have a talent for causing trouble." She was sure he would fire her at any moment, but to her surprise, he never did. Over time, Serena started adapting, but more importantly, she began noticing something about Adrian. Despite his distant demeanor, he never truly lost his patience with her, and in the quiet moments when he thought no one was watching, there was a certain loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. One afternoon, as Serena handed him his tea, their fingers brushed. His skin was unexpectedly cold. He tilted his head slightly, as if sensing her reaction. "You're nervous, aren't you?" His voice was smooth, quiet, but for some reason, it made Serena's heart skip. She hesitated, then softly replied, "No, it's just your hands are cold." Adrian remained silent for a moment before letting out a quiet chuckle. "I don't go outside much." There was something in his voice that made Serena's chest tighten. She didn't know if it was because Adrian rarely spoke about himself or because she was starting to care more than she should. Either way, she was here now, and she had no idea that this encounter would change both of their lives forever. The night mansion was always silent, almost unnaturally so, as if time itself had abandoned it. During the day, Adrian spent hours in the library, his fingers tracing over Braille books or sipping tea in quiet contemplation. At night, he sat alone on the balcony, listening to the whispers of the wind through the trees. Serena didn't know when she had developed the habit of watching him from a distance, but one thing was certain: Adrian Knight wasn't just blind, he was unbearably lonely. That evening, the air was colder than usual. Serena carried a cup of tea to the balcony, where Adrian sat motionless, his sightless eyes turned toward the darkness. He didn't look at her, yet the moment she approached, his voice broke the silence. "Watching me again?" His tone was calm, but there was a hint of teasing. Serena almost dropped the tea in surprise. She hadn't expected him to notice. "Oh, I just brought you some tea." She placed the cup on the table before hesitating, then sat down beside him. A cold breeze brushed against her skin. She clasped her hands together, debating whether to ask the question that had been lingering in her mind. She had been here long enough to know that Adrian wasn't the type to open up easily, but tonight, something about the stillness made her bold. "Adrian, what was the world like before you lost your sight?" This time, he didn't answer right away. He remained silent for a long moment, as if reaching into memories buried deep within him. "Brilliant." He let out a quiet chuckle. "The world used to be brilliant." His voice carried a strange mix of nostalgia and sorrow. Serena didn't interrupt. "I had everything, and lost everything in a single night." He exhaled slowly. "My parents were strong. I thought they were invincible. We had this tradition of driving to the countryside every weekend. But that last time, I was the one behind the wheel." Serena clenched her hands. "And the accident happened?" He nodded, lips curving into a hollow smile. "I was the only one who survived." He spoke as if each word weighed heavily on him. "But when I woke up, the world was no longer the same." "But because you lost your sight?" Adrian turned slightly toward her, his blind eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't name. "Not just that," his voice was quiet. "I lost my family. And I lost myself." A tightness formed in Serena's chest. She had always known Adrian carried pain, but hearing it in his own voice was different. "You've been blaming yourself all this time, haven't you?" she whispered. He didn't answer, but his silence told her everything. Without thinking, she reached out, gently taking his cold hand in hers. He tensed, but didn't pull away. "You don't have to live in that pain forever, Adrian." Her voice was soft, yet firm. "You're not alone. I'm here." He didn't speak, But after a moment, he gave her hand a small, almost imperceptible squeeze. And for the first time in years, Adrian let someone come closer to his heart. The rain had begun to fall. Droplets tapped softly against the window panes, blending with the gentle whisper of the wind weaving through the vast garden of the night estate. Inside the dimly lit library, the glow from the fireplace cast flickering shadows upon the walls, moving like silent dancers in the night. Serena stood by the window, watching as the raindrops traced delicate patterns on the glass. Since coming here, she had seen Adrian live through his endless days of solitude, locked in the world of darkness he had built around himself. But tonight, something inside her urged her to step closer, to break through that invisible wall. She turned away from the window, her heartbeat quickening as she approached him. Adrian sat in his usual chair, one hand resting lightly on the armrest, the other tracing over the pages of a braille book. "Do you like the rain?" she asked softly. Adrian paused, his fingers stilling over the raised dots. After a moment, he let out a quiet chuckle. "I don't dislike it," he said, "but I've never had a reason to like it either." Serena hesitated, then settled into the seat across from him. "You once told me the world used to be brilliant," she murmured. "What do you miss the most?" Adrian remained silent for a long moment, as if reaching into memories long buried beneath the weight of time. "The light," he finally said. "The way the first rays of the sun stretched across the sky. The endless blue above me. And my parents' faces." His voice dropped slightly at the last words, carrying a sorrow that lingered in the space between them. Serena's chest tightened. She didn't know why, but suddenly she wanted to erase that sadness, to give him something else to hold on to. "Would you like to experience the world in a different way?" she whispered. Adrian frowned slightly, as if weighing her words, but before he could respond, Serena gently reached out, taking his hand and guiding it to her face. His fingers trembled. She could feel his hesitation, but then, slowly, his fingertips moved, tracing along her cheek, then pausing at the corner of her lips. "Serena," his voice was lower now, rougher, as if something inside him had shifted. She didn't look away, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear it echoing in her ears. "Do you want to see me?" The space between them shrank. His breath was warm against her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, their lips met. The kiss was slow, tender, yet deep enough to unravel something inside both of them. Serena had never felt anything like this before. It was unfamiliar, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once, but above all else, it was something she wanted. She felt Adrian hesitate, as if pulling himself back, but she wasn't ready to let go, not yet. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice barely audible, caught between hesitation and longing. Adrian traced a gentle path down her collarbone, pausing at the delicate curve of her shoulder. "Are you sure?" His voice was hushed, deep with restraint. She didn't answer. Instead, she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time in her life, she made a choice, not out of duty, not out of fear, but for herself. That night, beneath the soft patter of rain outside, Serena gave herself to Adrian. Not out of pity, not out of recklessness, but because she knew, without a doubt, that her heart already belonged to him. The morning sun spilled through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the two figures wrapped in warmth. Serena stirred first, her body still tingling from the remnants of last night. She turned her head slightly, her gaze falling on the sharp, defined features of Adrian as he lay beside her. For a long moment, she simply watched him. Last night, she had given herself to him. Not out of recklessness, not out of pity, but because she had already given him her heart. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers grazing his jawline, but just as she was about to pull away, Adrian's voice rumbled in the quiet. "You're staring at me, aren't you?" Serena gasped, yanking her hand back. "How did you know?" A smirk played at his lips as he turned slightly towards her. "You're breathing differently." Before she could respond, a sharp knock at the door shattered the quiet. "Sir, you have a visitor," the butler's voice carried through. Adrian frowned. He rarely had visitors, let alone unexpected ones. Serena quickly sat up, pulling the blanket around herself, but before she could steady her racing heartbeat, the door slammed open. A tall man in a tailored suit strode in, flanked by 2 bodyguards. Serena's blood ran cold. "Dad," she whispered. Richard Aldridge's gaze landed on her first, his sharp eyes burning with disapproval, but when he turned to Adrian, his expression turned icy. "So, this is where you've been hiding?" His voice dripped with disdain. "Serena Aldridge, my daughter, reduced to playing housemaid?" Adrian sat up slowly, his sightless eyes unreadable. So this is the reason she was so afraid? His voice was calm, but there was something steely beneath it. Richard scoffed. "And who are you, a crippled recluse? Do you really believe you can keep my daughter?" Serena clenched her fists, but before she could speak, Adrian's voice cut through the air. "She is not an object for you to claim." Richard turned back to Serena. "Come, you've played enough games." Serena's breath hitched. Liev, her world shattered. "What?" Adrian's face remained emotionless. "Go." Tears burned behind her eyes, and Adrian, though blind, heard every step as she walked away. The rain poured mercilessly, drowning the world in a relentless rhythm. Serena knelt before the iron gates of the night estate, her dress soaked, her body trembling. The cold bit at her skin, but it was nothing compared to the pain in her chest. She had lost him once. This time, no matter what it took, she wouldn't let go. "Adrian," her voice cracked through the storm. "I'm not leaving. I love you." Inside the mansion, Adrian sat in the dark, head resting against his chair. He wasn't sure how long he had been sitting there. Since the moment she left, time had ceased to matter. But her voice, he heard it. Faint, desperate, real. His heart clenched painfully. He listened to the rain, but he couldn't tell if the water streaming down was just the storm outside or the sound of her crying. Like a habit, the habit of stepping out every night just to be sure she was no longer there. Adrian stood up. His hands brushed against the walls as he walked. His steps were guided not by sight, but by something deeper, something stronger. And then, when he reached the gates, she was still there. Adrian felt it before he saw it, the warmth of a fragile, trembling body, soaked through from the rain. "Serena," he didn't think. He knelt down, pulling her into his arms. Serena froze, then, as if unable to believe it, she looked up. "Adrian." Her voice broke. Adrian buried his face into her shoulder, his grip tightening. He didn't know if the water dripping down his face was rain or his own tears. "Are you still here?" His voice was raw. "I tried to let you go." Serena sobbed, cupping his face between her hands. "Because I belong here," she whispered. "I belong with you." And then, without hesitation, she leaned in and kissed him. Warmth light the darkness inside him shattered. At first it was faint, flickers of movement, blurred shapes through the rain, then clearer. A silhouette, a pair of teary, familiar eyes. Serena. His breath caught. He could see her. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. His hands trembled as he reached for her, touching her face as if to make sure she was real. "Serena." His voice shook. Serena's eyes widened. "Adrian, can you see me?" He swallowed hard, nodding, overwhelmed with emotions he couldn't name. "I can see you." And before she could say anything else, he pulled her against him, holding on to her like she was his entire world. Because she was. She had come back to him, and this time, he would never let her go. Golden sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a soft glow over the lush greenery of the night estate's garden. A light breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, weaving through the quiet morning air. On a wooden bench beneath the shade of an oak tree, Adrian sat, leisurely flipping through the pages of a book. But this time, it wasn't Braille, because now he could see. Lifting his gaze, his eyes followed the familiar figure moving between the flower beds. Serena. She stood in the middle of the garden, sleeves rolled up, her cheeks flushed with exertion, and a streak of dirt smudged across her nose. Yet, she was the most breathtaking sight he had ever laid eyes on. Leaning back, he smirked. "Don't tell me you've ruined the gardener's work again." Serena whipped around, hands on her hips, eyes widening in mock offense. "Excuse me? I am not ruining anything, I'm just improving this area a little." Adrian chuckled. "So, ruining it?" Serena huffed, but then softened, her lips curving into a small smile. She set the trowel aside and slowly made her way toward him. Adrian watched her every move, memorizing every tiny detail about her. There were things he had missed out on seeing for years, but now he could commit every part of her to memory. She sat down beside him, her bright eyes reflecting the morning sun. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. Adrian frowned. "Regret what? Seeing me and realizing I'm not as beautiful as you imagined?" She grinned mischievously. Adrian let out a quiet laugh before his expression softened. He reached out, his fingertips gently tracing the contours of her face, a habit he still hadn't let go of. "Whether I could see you or not, you were always the most beautiful to me." Serena felt her heartbeat quicken. "What if I tried to leave again?" she teased. Adrian didn't answer with words. Instead, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I won't let you go ever again." Serena laughed, wrapping her arms around him. The wind carried the soft scent of spring, weaving through the garden where two souls had finally found their way back to each other. Years ago, Adrian had lost his sight, but in the end, fate had brought him Serena, his light in the darkness. And now, he knew one thing for certain: he would never let her go again.